Good morning to you, and how is the counting going there in Burundi?
Well, the counting, Elvis, continues, we are told, but we hope to speak to the Electoral Commission in about an hour's time or so, and that's when we'll get a real sense of how things went yesterday and when to expect the results.
How's the situation on the ground, Vuyo? Any security concerns at present?
Well, not at the moment. I mean, the situation yesterday was far from, the bombings, and we heard on the day before yesterday, literally hours before polling stations were to open. Yesterday it was all quiet. People voted, except for one or two hotspots, which are essentially opposition territory here in Burundi. But even there, no major incident. But of course, we also heard that two police officers were killed, as well as one person linked to the opposition. But investigations, we are told, are going on to find out exactly whether, in fact, what we've heard is indeed true. In other words, whether the person belongs to the opposition and whether their death had everything to do with intimidation and the violence surrounding the elections. But overnight and up until now, we haven't heard of any incidents. From what we know, the counting continues, and from what the Electoral Commission had promised, we should get the final outcome tomorrow early evening or thereabout. Elvis?
Now, we do understand that most of the opposition parties pulled out of the elections. What does this mean?
It doesn't mean much at the moment, because you have had an election that, even though many people, including the United Nations, including the African Union, had problems with it, at the end of the day, they had to accept the fact that it was going to happen and there was no stopping it. They then kind of shifted the ball to the East Africa community of nations, the country of, the bloc of nations to which Burundi belongs. Now, the East African leaders then decided to, they basically endorsed the election, and then they were carefully monitoring things, hoping that the situation won't get worse, and it didn't. So what is left for the East Africa community to continue doing now is to continue with the conversations between the ruling party, the CNDD-FDD of President Pierre Nkurunziza, and the opposition. Now, if you cast your mind back 2-3 days ago, you will remember that on Sunday, that initiative, many people thought that initiative was falling apart. And that's after the ruling party, the CNDD-FDD, decided not to pitch for a meeting with the mediator. But since then, the ruling party has again recommitted themselves to that process, saying they had a problem with some of the parties that were going to appear there, because some of them had actually endorsed the coup and had done things that they, as the ruling party, felt were unconstitutional, so they couldn't sit around the same table with someone who had backed people who were doing unconstitutional things like the attempted coup. So, but since then, and this was reinforced again yesterday, the ruling party has said it will go back to the negotiating table, but of course with a number of riders. But they say their desire to actually fulfill the wish of the East African community of nations, which is to go back to the negotiating table and look at the possibility of setting up a government of national unity. They say they are committing themselves to that and they will not renege. I guess the big question is going to be how magnanimous President Pierre Nkurunziza, who in all likelihood is going to be re-elected as president, and how his party, which got 77% of the vote in the parliamentary elections last month, how both of them will behave. In other words, will they go to those negotiations with the kind of attitude that says, you know what, the people have voted for us overwhelmingly and we have no business trying to treat you very nicely. It really depends on just the degree of their magnanimity, I guess.
And that is the big elephant in the room. Thank you, Vuyo, for that update. You'll keep us updated in terms of the numbers coming in, and we'll cross to you again later. That is our contributing editor in Burundi, Vuyo Mvoko.